Thank you, Ryan, for the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining for our session today. Hope you enjoyed the summit over the last 2 days. So I'm Savina, as Ryan mentioned, and I am part of our public sector transport team at Amazon Web Services, and I'm really excited to be joined today with Anna. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi, my name's Anna Watt. I'm the Transport Research Lead at Transport for West Midlands. So I lead a team of modelers, analysts, GIS spatial analysts, performance metrics people, to provide data and insight for not just our transport colleagues, but also the wider combined authority.
Thank you. So today we're going to discuss a very important topic, and over the last 2 days there's been a lot of talk about data and how data is being shared across public transport. So we are going to speak about how Transport for West Midlands have developed their data team and how they started the journey, where they are now, and where they are planning to go. So with that, let's begin at the start of your journey. So Anna, what was the original vision for building your data team, and what was the reason for doing that?
So the provision of data around transport was originally outsourced to a consultancy, and so in 2017 it was decided to insource that. I felt there was a feeling that we weren't getting value for money, and we weren't building on the capabilities that we could do, we weren't getting the best out of that contract. So it was decided to insource that team. There was already an existing PTE or ITA. So there were a number of staff that about 4 or 5 that already existed that transitioned into that team. The contract was insourced around 2018, and from there we had a vision that, as you see on this chart, there's the basics of just collecting the data, which was a series of loops across, I can't remember, probably 350 sites, probably on a regular basis across the West Midlands. But we wanted to move from that, not just as a simple data provision, so there was a dashboard that you could download data from. We wanted to move into more insight rather than just data. So we wanted to provide not just data about just what we see on the network, but more operational data that we're seeing across multimodal data. We wanted to move into more in-depth analysis, and ultimately wanted to build more specialist teams. So we have moved, and we'll see later what those teams now look like, but we've been able to move across that journey from very just basic data collection through to a very in-depth specialist data engineering world, where we've got deep insight into huge amounts of data. So we've managed to do that over a period of time, and then we had the Regional Transport Coordination Centre was set up in 2018. Well, the beginnings of it was set up. It was officially opened in 2022, 21. But there was a focus on network mitigation, so where we've got disruptions on the network, the coordination centre was set up. So there's a focus on that operational data of understanding what's happening real time on the network. So we started ingesting data from Waze and presenting that on a dashboard so that the operations centre could see what was going on. So that was one of the triggers. And then the next trigger, really for a real step change, was the awarding of the Commonwealth Games, which normally you have 7 years to prepare for. We had 4. Not quite 4, 3.5, to prepare for. There was a big focus on what do we need to do, particularly operationally during the games. So that was the other focus of developing that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah. So that was the great vision. So obviously you had to build a team and find a way to do that. So can you walk us through the process of building that team when you had that long-term vision, but primarily you were funded by short-term funding?
Yeah. So on this slide, we're seeing our original, what we call the Data Insight team, had I don't know if any of you are familiar with Lottie, had a Lottie-style subscription model that each of the local authorities paid on the basis of population, and that replaced what was effectively the outsourced service. So there was that sort of subscription model, and that was the core delivery. So that's your basic data collection, and we've built from there where we've had then big projects. There's the ADEPT project that helped us roll out a set of ANPR cameras in conjunction with West Midlands Police that give us classified counts, get engaged with AWS to get some assistance on how we did that best. The Future Transport Zone grants, again, that was another slew of money that came in, and when these funds were coming in, not only were they used to do the work of the project, but they were top sliced to allow us to bring in staff to help build the team, build those capabilities that we needed to see. So moving in that path that we saw earlier from basic data collection through to analysis and research and more deep engineering and data management services. Slowly, as we've had those projects, we've taken a slice, managed to recruit people to upskill as we've moved through that journey. And then with the Commonwealth Games, there wasn't direct funding into the team itself, but we had a games team that I managed that recruited a number of people. There's no funding specifically came with that, but what it did do was a big focus on we now need to do this thing. So we had my modelling and mapping team, we did all the forecasting stuff, and then we handed over to and worked with the data insight team to say, this is all the forecasting stuff, this is what we know is going to happen on the network or likely to happen. How do we operationalise that? How do we put it into the coordination centre to make real products? There was a massive step change in the products that the operations centre use in terms of incident management systems, forecasting, the ease of access, availability to multiple partners. So that was a big step change that the data insight team sort of stepped into and helped operationalise.
And with kind of all of these and building the team and not necessarily having funding for specifically recruiting people, how did you manage that risk throughout all these projects?
Risk is probably the word. It's not, you have to, we've had to take a leap of faith to say, we're going to bring these people in. We don't know. My role isn't funded for another 2 years. So it's that risk of bringing people in, knowing that you've got a 3 or 4 year project, you bring people in, make the most of it, see how you go. And things are always going to change. So you'll bring people in with an intention of like, we've got this requirement, and suddenly it's slightly changed, and maybe we need slightly different skill sets. And those people might mould into those skill sets, or they might not. So there's always been a sort of, we'll bring a couple of people in, we'll see how they sit, we'll see what the requirements, because the requirements will always change, as everybody knows. So it's been a sort of, yes, we're taking a risk. Sometimes we might bring somebody in on fixed term contract and hope that we can extend them, or just take a risk and go, it's full time. If the worst comes to the worst, we'd have to get rid of people, but that has not yet happened. So we're very, very lucky. We've gone from a team of about 7 to 26 now, across a different range of disciplines that we'll talk about in a minute. So yeah, it is taking a risk, and we've got a very supportive director who seems to do magic things with money under cups. Yeah, so we're lucky.
Well, that is great, because we are now, you mentioned this earlier, and you've done through the process, you've made some risks in order to get that team to join you. So that you obviously have mentioned already why you decided to bring that capability in-house, but can you walk us through what were the benefits to you as Transport West Midlands of having everyone, having a team that can actually carry out the data insights?
Yeah, so we talked a little bit already about capabilities, and that's been a really big thing about us bringing people in. And sometimes we've taken people through apprenticeships, we've been people who've come tangentially from different types of careers that we know we've got the right kind of attitude and capability, the ability to grow into those roles. So building people's capabilities is really important for us, and that goes with the people bit of like looking after your people. Public sector is not the best paid place. So if somebody comes to work in public sector, it's because they want to be there usually, unless they have no idea what they've walked into. But generally speaking, people know what they're getting. You're not going to get paid as much as you would do in private sector. So we want to look after those people, give them interesting things, grow the capabilities. And because we've had such a lot of change, we've been able to sort of go, here's the next step, and the next step, and the next challenge. And those people that we want are the people who love that challenge, who want to step up, who really want to embrace. My team, we go, well, you want what? By when? Okay, fine. It's always be fine. But they, particularly with the games, they're very, very high-paced, need to sort of turn things around, and we want to grow those people. And the other thing for us is about retaining that skill in-house. So we've worked with partnerships. So rather than having whole pieces of work that we would outsource and give to somebody and then just take it back, often we don't have the intellectual capital at the end of that. We don't understand how it was built. We don't understand what's happened. So when we work in partnerships, so we work with Amazon ProServe, and we've done similarly with Esri, it's been really helpful for us to jointly learn Amazon learning about our world and we're learning about data engineering particularly, and data management. That's been a really effective way of us growing together, but retaining that intellectual capital. And it also allows people to grow in those roles in exposure that they might not get otherwise if we just outsource something. So that's a really key part of our sort of development strategy.
Great, thank you, Anna. So you've mentioned already what was the original vision for the team, what were the benefits of building that team and why you wanted to do that, but I'm sure everyone's wondering how the team looks like right now. So can you tell us that?
Yep, so I don't know why we put it this way around. Foundational stuff, so we've now got these are 6 teams basically that sit into what we call the front and the back end of the pantomime horse. So I look after the delivery side of it, and my boss, Stu, looks after the foundations. That includes data management, data engineering, product management. Size-wise, that's probably, I'm counting up very quickly, about 10 people, I think, in that side. And I've probably got 15 in my side in terms of delivery. They're taking that data, using it for performance metrics, deep research, running lots and lots of different sets of data, and working across the command authority as well. So a big piece of bus research that's about to be published. That's been the culmination of 2 or 3 years worth of work. Mapping and modelling as well. So the people who use the data and produce customer-facing things, that's what we look after. In terms of funding now, so we've moved away when the CRSTS, the City Region Sustainable Transport Settlement, which is like a mini Devo deal for transport, was settled, so that covers 22 to 27. I know that's supposed to be 5 years and it only sounds like 4, but that is the 5-year period. So that was about £1 billion worth of consolidated capital money that came to the authority to deliver, rather than having piecemeal sets of funding coming in. So now, rather than our subscription model, that's been replaced by a top-sliced CRSTS deal. Same amount of money, but paid from a different pot. So that's how we're funded at the moment.
Yeah, and that, having already built that team, you mentioned 20-something people. Originally, when you started in 2017, was it? How many people were there?
About 7, I think.
About 7.
Yeah, 1 contractor and maybe 6 permanent and one contractor, and now we're about 25 and a half FTEs. Yeah, and so I suppose some of the challenges, the places that we're at now, in terms of we're doing, obviously we've evolved into this sort of much more sort of structured area with much more sort of specialism. People do blend, so we have people who are working across the teams. It's not really like you can't talk to these people. What we are doing as part of this data management and data engineering is we're moving into our Amazon Redshift environment. So we've had historically a Postgres environment where we've had data just everywhere, messy. 3,000 different versions of a slightly different version of a GIS file. Nobody knows why. We've got a different version of it. So there's been a huge move towards productionizing that data. So our really big data sets, our ANPR data, our sensor data, all coming into that environment. And now the bits, I've called the bits around the edges, that the stuff that actually takes us a lot of time. So we take the same set of bus patronage data and we just put it into 8 different places every month. Or we need to stop doing that, and we need to productionize that, even though it's a small set of data, because it takes a lot of time. And we have probably, I think, something like 650 metrics that we have to produce on a varying different degrees. So we need to be able to automate that. So the big sets of data in there, we're still doing that sort of transition project of getting the smaller bits of data, but the ones that are resource intensive for all the analyst teams. So that's a big project, and that's been more or less like it's been difficult for people to sort of let go of the immediacy. I used to be able to just throw something into a dashboard and nobody cared where it came from and they just trusted the data. And I go, no, I want you to do we need to have it clean, we need to have it audited, we need to understand where it's come from, we need to make sure it's right. So that has been a transition. We're still in the middle of it. The big sets of data there, the smaller bits of data are going in slowly. But that's been our big transition. But people are starting to see now the benefit of that piece of work. Though we had a piece of work come in and was like, can you give me this number? Would have taken 4 days probably usually to do it. We've done it in 30 seconds with a materialized view, that is your summary tables, because the data was already there, because somebody's already thought about it and somebody could just tweak a bit of code. So massive changes in terms of, so people find it really painful up front. It's taking me ages to get my data in, but the speed at which you can get something out and know that it's robust and clean, and you know where the metadata is, and you know what the nuances of that data are, is sort of transformational, and people are just starting to see the benefits of that. So it's really lovely to see. Every time we come there, we have a little moment going, see, that's why we're going through this pain. So yeah, that's where we are. That's the big thing we're just trying to tidy up now.
Yeah, and having that internal capability and the team being upskilled and knowing how to use that new technology is surely something that you're really proud of.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talks throughout the day about the data sharing and ingesting data and making use of it. So you at Transport for West Midlands are working with all of these partners.
Yep.
So, and you also mentioned with kind of that alluding to the fact that you're moving into a new funding stream with a longer term vision. How do you stick to the long-term strategic vision while staying agile and managing to accommodate new technology?
Always a tough one. So I think I suppose having that vision but not being wedded to the technology. So we've had things change underneath our feet that we weren't really planning for. So we had a Tableau license, that's how we visualized. Suddenly our license costs were 3 times what they were, and we're like, well, we're moving to Power BI. So right, okay, we're moving, right. That's part of the transition. We're moving away really from Excel into SQL. We need to have a vision that says this is where we want to, this is what we want to provide for our customers. And the technology will change. So even in the last year, we had a sort of idea about this is how we're going to provide APIs externally. That's not working. So we need to have a roadmap that says these are functionalities and these are the things that we want to provide for our customers, but not being wedded to the technology. I mean, you have to also be able to do quick wins. So you have to be able to iterate. So interesting to the point made earlier, I think, by Jennifer, being able to sort of say, we're going to do a little bit here. Like, don't go out for a massive system. There's a very big tendency within our organisation. I don't know if it's the same for other people. Like, I need a thing that does this thing. Actually, probably, why don't you start with the basics? Let's do something small and agile. Let's learn what's working, what's not working, and then you can build from that. So recently, we've pulled a whole load of people off our projects and went, we need, this sounds ridiculous, a map of everything. We were like, just throw it on a page because we need to show people what GIS is and what the power of it is. And it's not just about maps, but at least be able to visualize it. So we're like, right, everybody just stop for like 2 days, put everything in thing, put it on there, and then we can start to educate other people about what the power of what we can do is. But when we say, oh, it's a GIS map, they're kind of like, I don't know what that really is. So we need to be able to show people. I think that's the other thing of like, it was particularly painful in the games of like, these people are not going to be able to tell you what they want because they don't know what they want until they see what they don't want. So you have to put something that's low cost, and sometimes that's not easy from an engineering perspective because you have to rework a lot of things, a low cost sort of version of something in front of somebody to say, is this what you want? And build the trust that you know what you're doing, that you can do something, you can deliver something quickly, and it's good quality. The data might not be yours and the data might not be good quality, but the premise of what you're trying to do. So small steps of iteration to build trust in the team to say, we know what we're doing, we can help you get to the place where you need to. And if that is a big system in the end, fine, but you've done a lot of learning along the way, you'll be able to refine your requirements. So that's definitely part of the ethos that we have.
And it is when seeing the value at the end, when it makes sense why you've done what you've done. So you already mentioned the crust funding and the deeper devo, and that is a landscape that is changing now in public sector. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. For anybody who's not in this world, deeper devolution, you'll hear people talking about integrated settlement, what used to be called single settlement. So ourselves and Greater Manchester are the first ones to sign on the dotted line for deeper devolution. That is sort of what we've done with transport for CRSDS, but across the whole of this, not the whole, nearly all of the combined authority funding. So it's the idea of that is that you should be able to take money from these different pillars that we've got. I think, I'm not sure if Manchester's are the same, and be able to focus in on a place. So there's lots of discussions earlier about place-based strategies, being able to take place rather than a siloed sort of functional view of place and just sort of scattering things where you think they might be able to tune in and actually do the right thing for that place. So it might be that locality needs skills. It doesn't need a transport intervention, but the one over there, they definitely need a cycle hub or whatever that is, but be able to fine-tune that. So the idea of devolution is devolution in its own right, but to be able to deliver better value for the citizens of our authority. So in the context of that, there is what we call fungibility, which you can move 10% of your funds between the different pillars. So we will have one big settlement. Our CRSTS is not included for us until 2027, but there'll be a big pot and be able to move between those pots more easily. But it requires us to have a much better understanding and clear visibility. It's a massive role for GIS particularly, to be able to show what is happening at a place-based level. So for us, it means that there are less, so when we talked earlier about this fund came in and this fund came in, we played around with this, it's going to be different now. It's going to be much clearer about this is the money that is going to this team to deliver these services. So yeah, there's going to be a change of, I think, scrutiny and visibility of what's being spent and what it's for.
Yeah, and I know you just mentioned that, and that was actually part of the next question. With that move from the annual funding to the longer-term funding, what are the pros and cons that you see, in your view, with building and maintaining the team?
Yeah, I think you're right that there are probably pros and cons. Having the stability, so having come from a world where it's like this pot's coming in and that pot's coming in now, we need to manage this and we need to manage this. There's a lot of management of funds and keeping on top of the monitoring evaluation and all the finances for lots and lots of different funds that have been coming in. This will be much clearer. So in terms of our reconciliation, much easier to manage financially. What it does do, it makes it, coming back to your point about how do you manage to keep a vision, it means that although we've got 1 year settlement, we've 4 to 5 year settlement period, we need to have a vision, but we need to be able to iterate within that. So again, we don't want to be committing to, we're going to deliver this specific technology. We need to be able to have a roadmap to say, these are the pieces of functionality or customer interventions that we need to focus on and allow us to iterate what that looks like as we go along. There's going to be, I think we're going to be required to be more clear about the roadmap, whereas we might be able to iterate within 2 or 3 years. That I think we'll need to be able to commit to this is where we're going more clearly. And I think that will require us to be better at explaining what it is that we do and the value. So carrying on that story about the small wins and using more customer-centric language that as techies not always very good at. So yeah, I think there's pros and cons. But for us, I think it will feel like less flexibility because we've been used to sort of like, we can take a bit of this and we can take a bit of that and do a bit of melding of things where we'll need to be more clear. But in a way, that also takes that sort of pain of like having to sort of constantly be on the move, have maybe a clearer sort of roadmap.
Yeah, and with the new changes that you're talking about now and kind of the uncertain environment that's coming, do you think that there is going to be a change and the requirements of your team in terms of skills? Will there be an evolution that corresponds to the challenges that you're facing?
Yeah, I feel that we're on the cusp of that, and we need to. That's I think probably what we need to be clear about. We've got a planning session tomorrow morning on this very thing about how do we move forward. I feel like again when we talked about we're moving away from having more people who are sort of in that Excel world into people who are more SQL and Python based. Who our engineering team we probably might want to expand a bit if we're taking on more responsibilities. So I feel like we're moving into those more sort of cloud-based technologies, more code-based rather than Excel. Not that we'll always need Excel. We love Excel, but we've got people in the team who don't actually use Excel at all. They're absolutely like, oh, I don't really know how to use that, and they prefer to be in Python. And that's a sort of sea change of the people that we're sort of coming through. So I think that's where we're going to is sort of more as we move away from that Excel base. So we're moving into more of a data science. I think we've talked about data analysts, we're moving into a data science place. So we've done a piece of work looking at our skills across the team and sort of analysing where they're at and where we might need to be. And we're definitely pitching data science as the next level of iteration. So if you go through a growth through an analyst sort of route, the data science is the place where we want people to end up. We've got definitely 6 or 7 candidates in our team who are almost on the cusp of that, moving into that space. And that's where I think where we get the real value. Being able to derive the really deep insight. And we were talking yesterday about blending lots of different types of data, being able to sort of see how the patterns that those blended sets of data are, that you can't really do that in Excel. You have to be in a big data lake. That's the reality. So we need those Python, those SQL skills. So I think there's a move towards those sort of skills for sure.
Yeah. And I know we only have a few minutes left, and I would like to have some time for questions. So I'll ask my final question. You're clearly saying that the skill set is evolving and that you're moving towards data science. How are you attracting new talent, young talent into your team? And how are you enabling and growing your current skill set of your team? And do you see automation playing any role in that?
Yes. So we have, it's on the slide, the Transport Skills Academy, which sits in a different directorate. They do a lot of outreach to a lot of schools, so we do a huge amount of outreach. We've got people who go do all sorts of activities with schools to try and get people, hey, what is transport? And what are data skills? So we have people that come through work experience. So we've got a work experience week this week. Apprenticeships, we've got some amazing apprentices that have come either purely as an apprentice, or we've had people who we've put onto apprenticeship schemes to upskill them, and that has really been transformational for people who just, one day were just in Excel and suddenly going, oh, I've just done an SQL materialized view here. Of course I've done it already. And you're just like, oh, good, right, okay. It's bearing fruit. And people who've been to boot camps as well, that's been a success for us. So yeah, definitely homegrown, I think, is the way that we go. And that's partly, we can indoctrinate them in the ways of good data management, but also it's value for money in terms of the way the public sector works. So. Yeah, and in terms of technologies, there's going to be, I think AI is going to come in. We're going to be talking about data ontologies, using AI to hopefully create data ontologies, and then using AI potentially to get answers out. I think we might still need analysts to write those queries in the way that we will get the answer still, but we'll have to see how that pans out.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna. We have a few questions that came through Slido, so thanks for everyone for that. So we have a question from someone anonymous, but they're asking, how are TFWM thinking about helping other regions who are following in your footsteps?
We love talking to everybody. We do quite a lot there's a lot of meetings. So the UTG and the Urban Transport Group have set up a new data group that Stu, my boss, leads. So that's another one where we're data sharing. We do a lot of meetups. We're talking to TFGM about how they're evolving with their bus franchising, what that means for their teams. So there's a lot of connections that we have through those groups. Always happy to talk to people. We love learning from each other. Went to the first UTG data group and was like, okay, that's a really good idea. And that's a really good idea. And we'll take that one. And then similarly, we're sharing. We shared our skills analysis with other people. So absolutely happy to be. Yeah, so the UTG data group is probably one of the key ones we go to with people at Trib. There's various sort of data groups of people in our team sort of attend. If there's any connections that you want, happy to make those.
And we've run out of time, but thanks everyone for your questions. And I encourage you to find us after this and ask a few more questions, because I saw that there are a few still outstanding. Thank you.